They have a administrative assistant that supports them, so they pay for that, and that's what's in the MOU. And for the California Academy MOU for MAD, there is a family engagement liaison person that they also help support the MAD program. So it's just kind of an MOU that we have in there, and that's revenue to us because they're paying us for those individuals. And that's it.
Any public comments on this item, Mr. Escobedo?
No public comment.
Okay, board members, any questions or comments? Okay, hearing no questions, need a motion to approve G2?
I motion to approve the business services contracts for the 23-24 school year.
I second.
Okay, motion and second. All in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That concludes that. We will move to G3, approval of educational services contracts for 2023-24 school year, educational services. And I just want to comment that I really appreciate the efficiency in terms of bringing them as a bundle to this, so we're all and not kind of all over the place. And so we have all our questions in one place. It makes it easier. So thank you. Dr. Sheffield.
Good evening, Board President, board members, Superintendent Maldonado. Very happy to be here. Tonight I'm presenting the education services contracts for the 23-24 school year, and we're ready to go. And so I'm excited, of course, as we look at education services, we always have to bring back our focus and how we center our goals and the decisions that we make as a department. Always looking at our students at the center, and a theme that we'll really concentrate on this year: every child, every chance, every day, and making sure we focus on that. And that's how we're making our decisions, right along with our data. And so we'll be using the MTSS model. And one thing I want to make sure we focus on also is looking at what are we doing for all of our students. And many of these contracts will fall in the Tier 1 space, and so providing that high quality Tier 1 curriculum and instruction is very important for our students. And we say teachers are use inclusive practices to support student identity and agency in rigorous learning environments. So our teachers and students are at the center of what we do in education services. And so, again, taking a look at the MTSS model, and then I'll be showing you the contracts that we'll be bringing forth for education services. For all of our students, we have a variety of contracts here, mainly focused on the curriculum that we're bringing into the classrooms. Always something that I notice a lot more this year is that many of the things that come forth are the things that people don't see. It's the things that they would just expect in the class. The curriculum's there, the books are there. And as we've seen with the textbook adoption and a variety of things that come forth, these are some of the things that people don't realize we're bringing forth to make sure we keep our classrooms rigorous and alive. So we have the Math Annex, and that is a contract keeping our students abreast of what's happening in math and really understanding and learning how to work with math and our assessments. Siembra College. Siembra College is going to provide a free service to our students, bringing college and career awareness to our students. And many times our students don't get information. As our students get into high school, many times there are some students that will take the PSAT and they take the pre-assessment test that feed into college. And then the College Board would provide information on different colleges. And so that would leave some of our students out that did not access that. And so Siembra College is going to provide a platform for their phones for students and parents to be able to access and have information, get to a variety of counselors and programs that they wouldn't naturally always have, but it'll be available for all of our students. And now in a information age, they'll have it at their fingertips on their phones. The Crescendo Group is for continuing our work with Grading for Equity, providing an online program. The Monarch Photography is for Santa Barbara High School. We're doing a pilot with them, providing services for them to take our student photo IDs, pictures for our student information system, ARIES, as well as taking pictures for their yearbook. IXL and Thinking Nation and CalSoap, those are 3 programs that I will be bringing to our next meeting. We still have some information to gather for that, but I wanted to make sure you are aware that we are bringing those forward. So anything you see in red are coming forward in the next meeting. As we move to Tier 2, still providing great services, but it's not hitting all of our students, although many have opportunities. The AVID program, that is hitting some of our students. Our students have that opportunity to apply to be in the AVID program. We renew this contract every year, and that is happening in all of our secondary spaces. For Legends Photography, that's for our sports teams at Santa Barbara High School. And then for our football games, we bring in the ambulance service, and they sit there to provide support, not only for the team, but if anything were to happen with any parents or students or any spectators, they would provide that opportunity of giving support to those individuals. Fall Science, that will be with our ELD and Science in our elementary space, and then Kendall Hunt Publishing, bringing more information to support our elementary math classes. And then moving on to Tier 3, we have Gateway Educational Services, and that is tutoring provided for our African American students. And then IXL Math for English Language Arts and Math, that will be for our special education students. And again, bringing that back for the next board meeting. And that comes to a total with the contracts that we have here listed, $105,966. As we move on to the next slide, like I said, we're in many places where you don't even realize. And so these platforms and contracts were brought at the last board meeting, but I wanted to make sure you're aware which ones were related to education services. Again, listing our Tier 1, our Tier 2, and our Tier 3 spaces. I highlighted some of the things that are happening within our libraries and the support services that are provided here. Some of the big ones to make note of: Renaissance Learning. Renaissance Learning has to do with our STAR testing. Newsella, providing content for our students to have actionable live news information for our English Language Arts teachers to use in their classes, as well as our social studies and ethnic studies classes. So those are some of the big things that I thought I would bring to your attention. Again, Elevation, renewing that contract that we've already had. And that total that was brought at that last meeting was $955,633.73. And that is it.
Any requests to speak on this item?
No request to speak.
Okay. Board members, any questions? Ms. Jessica Vito.
Thank you, Dr. Sheffield, for that presentation. Only question I have is the Siembra College resource that you talked about being available to students on their mobile devices.
Yes.
Does that include the district-issued iPads for students?
They can put it on there, yes,
Okay.
absolutely. And I've been working with Tony Ramirez and making sure that we provide that for our students.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Additional questions, board members? I do just have one question where the ambulance services, it says DP High School, DPH High School. Is it only for DP or is that for everybody? I don't know where that slide was that we talk about ambulance.
For the
service.
ambulance. So the different school sites will be bringing forth their contracts.
Oh, okay.
I have not received them as of yet, but every high school does have that ambulance service provided for their teams, and they're usually on the field.
Okay, great, thank you. And then I just need to make an acknowledgement in terms of Gateway. There's a contract, I know it's in that bundle, but I need to have a separate vote on that so that I can recuse myself from that
Okay.
as a board member. So other than that, can we make a motion for everything other than Gateway, and then we'll take a separate vote?
I motion to approve the educational services contract except for the Gateway contract for 23-24 school year.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
And then I'll move to approve the Gateway contract for educational services for 23-24 school year.
I second that motion.
Okay, and we'll do a roll call vote on this. Start with Ms. Escobedo.
Aye.
Ms. Munoz.
Aye.
Mr. Banning.
Aye.
And I will recuse. Motion passes 3-1.
Thank you all.
So just thank you, Dr. Sheffield, as we're coming to our next item that I wanted to acknowledge. Obviously, Ms. Alvarado is absent today, and just wanted to acknowledge that she's here. She's taking care of some personal business, and we wish her well with that. But any votes that you're seeing unanimous, they're 4-0 because of that. So we will move to G4, approval of proposal from Sage Energy Consulting to consult Santa Barbara Unified on selling renewable. Desmond Ho, you're at the podium, okay?
Well, good evening, President Sims Moulton, board members, and Dr. Maldonado. Thank you for your time. So tonight, I'll be presenting a proposal from Sage Energy Consulting to help SB Unified with the selling of renewable energy credits. Let's see here. So let's go through a very quick overview of what are renewable energy credits, what is the selling process, the financial associated with that, and then also the potential use of the funds. So renewable energy credits, or otherwise known as RECs, are credits that are produced when a renewable energy source generator, such as ourselves with our solar, produce 1 megawatt hour of energy. And just as your reference, 1,000 watts is 1 kilowatt, and 1,000 kilowatts is 1 megawatt. So for every megawatt hour of energy that you produce, you get one of these RECs, and you send that energy to the grid. This is a tradable commodity, and these credits are often purchased by companies that need them to support their renewable energy goals. So selling of the RECs is completed through the Western Renewable Energy Generation Information System, quite a mouthful there, and it is a not very straightforward system, as we have to perform energy production verifications, and you basically are selling these RECs through a market. So we have to find the right buyers, and this is where Sage Energy Consulting comes in. So Sage Energy Consulting right now works with us, and they actually helped us design our solar project, and they've been ongoing in their consulting of the construction process of our solar as well as our battery storage. They've been doing this work for a very long time, and they have a very thorough understanding of our system as well as what we are able to generate. And so what this proposal is for is over the course of the next year, they'll teach me how to go through that Western Renewable Energy Generation Information System and how to sell this. And for 2 years after that, they will help me with the reporting and also the verification process that is required. Okay, so why are we doing this? Based on the market for RECs in the Western United States, the current value of each REC is about $13 per megawatt hour. SB Unified is expected to generate around 6,900 megawatt hours of energy per year once all of our solar is online. With that, if you do the simple math, comes out to an expected revenue of about $89,700 per year. And I just averaged out the 3 years of Sage Energy Consulting fees, so $9,233 per year, which gives us a net revenue of $80,466 per year. However, it is important to note that this is a base number and it's contingent upon a lot of things. For instance, the market value of RECs, that changes. You can almost think of it like a stock. It's going to change according to supply and demand. And one thing that may drive down this is because of the NEM 3.0 that came in April of this year, a lot of people were hurrying to get in solar. So as those start to get online, there may be a glut of supply temporarily lowering the price of RECs. But that's not something that I can clearly speculate on because I don't know what's going to do to the market. Also, generation rates are based on what is the maximum potential. So if we encounter a year when there's more clouds, more rain, etc., then our generation is going to be less. Therefore, we're going to create fewer RECs. Okay, so this is just a sort of like a baseline number, but it is safe to say that the numbers will fluctuate from year to year. So what am I proposing to do with this revenue? I would like to use these funds to hire a sustainability intern to help SB Unified with the application of additional grants and also work on projects at school sites with teachers and students. The funds can also be used towards energy efficiency upgrades such as HVAC, lighting and water heaters, etc., around all the school sites. There's also a big push for more waste reduction and also food scrap programs at school sites, so an intern would definitely assist with these types of projects. I am proposing that the budget be overseen by the district operations and sustainability coordinator, currently me, and all the board will be regularly updated on our activities, as well as anything that's requiring board approval will be brought forth to the board. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
No request to speak.
No request to speak.
Board members, questions or comments? Mr. Escobedo.
Thank you, Mr. Ho. My question pertains to the sustainability intern. Would you be recruiting for this position? I know it's a little early, but recruiting for this position from SBCC and UCSB, or what are your plans for that?
Yeah, I would like to get somebody who is either doing undergrad in the later stages, or maybe after they just graduated, or through my program at Bren School at UCSB. Those students would be highly interested in doing something like this.
Fantastic. Thank you. Another program that I'm sure you're aware of is Civic Spark. Have you looked into Civic Spark at all?
I have not, actually, but I will.
I'll send you information about Civic Spark.
Okay,
It's
thank
a
you.
similar internship program for recent grads that's through an AmeriCorps program.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? No. So as you know, Mr. Ho, I was one of the ones when we originally come in, and even looking at your position, was it going to potentially be profitable and come back? So we're back full circle with that. So I was at that Show Me the Money at that time. So I appreciate your presentation today, and I see that, this was a worthwhile investment in how it is paying for itself, as well as when we need additional help, that savings is allowing us to not go into our general fund, but this particular program is doing that. And so as you're hiring or bringing on interns, so it's not long-term. I mean, they're not staying past the time that you need them or past the funding that they're able to keep here now. It's not going to be an ongoing that later comes into the general fund, is what I'm trying to say.
As of right now, we're going to go year by year, just
Okay.
because I don't even know what the funds are going to look like. Years from now, they could completely remove this market for all we know. We just don't know. So this is definitely a year-on-year basis, nothing permanent.
I appreciate that. Hearing no additional comments and questions, may I have a motion for approval?
I so move.
Second.
Okay, moved in second. All in favor, please say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, we'll move to G5, approve of resolution 2023-24-01, approving leaseback contract documents, authorizing execution.
As Marina comes in, I do want to remind the board, this is one of those items that 5, 6, and 7, 5 and 6 go together.
Yes, well, all of them go together.
5, 6, and
One-
7.
5, 6, okay.
Yes.
Yes.
It's all about the same project.
Yes, thank you.
Good evening, President Sims Moten, board members, Superintendent Dr. Maldonado, the cabinet. I'm here tonight to present two resolutions and one item for the DSA-approved inspector, which is also for the same project, the project being Adams Elementary School Multipurpose Room Upgrades Project. The second and third items are contingent on the approval of the previous items, so I'm going to start with resolution number 2023-24-01, and the resolution requests the approval of leaseback contract documents for the Adams Elementary School multipurpose room upgrades and project, and the execution of the site lease and facilities lease between RSH Construction, Inc. and Santa Barbara Unified School District. The project will use the leaseback delivery method as authorized under Education Code 17406. We will lease the site to RSH Construction. That's our contractor who will construct the project on the site and then sublease it back to the district. We have determined that the contractor's proposal provides the best value to the district for the project. The project will be completed through a site lease in which the site is leased to the construction company, and the facilities lease which allows them to sublease it back to the site to us, and we'll be making the payments on that sublease. The facilities lease also includes the pre-construction provisions and construction provisions that the contractor must comply with during the construction phase. In the next resolution, the contractor will provide a guaranteed maximum price after this resolution is approved, which would be a proposal that would also require board approval. At this time, I would like to ask for your approval of resolution number 2023-2401.
Any additional public comments on requests for this
No
item?
public comment.
Okay. Hearing no request to speak, may I have a motion to approve?
I move to approve the resolution.
Second.
Been moved in second. All in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Now that the resolution 1 is approved, I present you with resolution number 2023-24-02. This resolution requires the board approval for the guaranteed maximum price for the Adams Elementary School multipurpose room upgrades project. So the board has just approved the leaseback contract documents and the execution of the site lease between the RSH Construction and the Santa Barbara Unified School District. The contractor, RSH Construction Incorporated, has completed the pre-construction services phase and they prepared the GMP cost estimate of $1,958,315 for this project. This GMP is based on plans and specifications by the architect, TSK Architects, Inc. Education Code Section 17406 requires the board to approve the proposed GMP before the contractor may proceed with the construction phase. With this, I would like to ask the board to approve this resolution for the contractor's GMP of $1,958,315.
Okay. Any request to speak on this item?
No.
Hearing none, may I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So now that we can move forward with the project, we need to assign a DSA-approved inspector. So we have the item, next item is about the DSA inspector, and I'd like to ask you to approve the Leach Group as DSA inspector on this project. They are the Division of State Architects Inspector, and they have been working with us on many other projects. We're very happy with their services. Their proposal is attached. The proposal is for $103,200.
Okay. Any request to speak on this item?
No.
Okay. Hearing none, may I have a motion for approval?
I move to approve the proposal from Leach Group for Division of the State Architect Inspection Services for the Adams Multipurpose Room Remodel Project.
I second.
Okay. Moved in second. All in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Next, we'll move to G8, approval of human resources. Dr. Becchio is on his way.
Good evening, Board President Sims Moten, board members, Dr. Maldonado, congratulations on your contract renewal. I do bring before you the human resources recommendation list, and I just wanted to take a minute, if you would allow me, to point out a couple items of significance. If you'll notice that on this list tonight, we have several certificated management appointments. So congratulations to them. Nathan Dunlap and Casey Turner are both internal. These are internal promotions to site-level administrator positions, so I wanted to congratulate them. I also wanted to point out that it's an interim position, but Lucia is stepping into a space to help us out with project manager position, which has been a vacant position. And then I also wanted to just point out a couple retirements. Jose Gomez, who's a Spanish teacher at Dos Pueblos High School and has served 25 plus years. And then Salvador Mora at senior gardener at La Colina, 23 plus years of service. And if I could also just point out on the classified promotions, we have Carlos Contreras, congratulations, is moving into a senior gardener position. Myra Guinto, who's moving into the office manager position at La Cuesta Alta Vista. Maria Madrigal, who had been working, she's working as the Administrative Secretary 3, so that's the Principal Secretary at Santa Barbara High School. And then Jasmine Sanchez, who recently started here at the district office as the Administrative Assistant for the Assistant Superintendent, Dr. Sheffield. And with that, I want to present to you the board recommendation list for your consideration. Thank you.
Okay, any requests to speak on this item?
No.
Hearing none, may I have a motion for approval? Thank you, Dr. Vecchio.
I so move.
Second.
Motion second. All in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Motion passes. And we're going to 9.
Thank you very much. And believe it or not, this is a compliance item. I'm actually excited to bring this item forward to you because recently the board approved a position, a little bit of an increase of a position in HR so that we can focus on compliance, particularly around STRS and PERS issues, because those are so critical and they can affect retirees way later in life without them having even known what the mistake was that was made. And so we do have someone serving quasi in that position right now, but as the person's transitioning from payroll to our office, she's also taking a look at some of the things and found this item, which is a really, really important one. I'll try to briefly explain. The district engaged in a process of making sure that some of our administrative assistant positions that had been changed to be management positions were classified properly. I believe this was back in 2018, so that they were either confidential or classified positions. This was very important for the employee because they didn't really meet the standard to be management positions, which means that they should be receiving or should not be exempt from overtime. And when you're a management position, you are exempt from overtime. So it was important that we got this right. And we did set out on a path and a plan to convert these positions. What recently our compliance manager found was that there was a couple moves in that needed to be done properly so that later, if we do get a STRS or PERS audit, that we have that compliance in place and there won't be any issues. What's really important is that there's a few things that are important in these moves. One is that the board approves position changes, appointments, changes, promotions, all the things that you see on the human resources recommendation list. 2 is that whatever position someone's serving in needs to appear in that way on a salary schedule. Okay. And then the 3rd is that there's a job description that the board has considered or approved that actually matches the names that are on the salary schedule. So those are really the 3 things that I'm bringing forward to you today. This does date back, but we would like to make sure that we are able to show, if ever audited, there has not been an audit finding on this, but if ever audited, we do have a record that the board considered the actual changes and approved them, even if it's retroactively, that the salary schedules were approved and the proper names on the job titles were on those salary schedules, and that the job description has been considered by the board and approved. So I wanted to thank you for letting me give you the background on that. I know it's written in here, but this is a really important item so that our employees, once they do retire, are not going to experience any negative repercussions from not having these things in order. I'm happy to take any questions that you might have.
Any requests to speak?
No.
Board members, any questions? Yeah, was there any financial, change due to this change, or that, that oversight, or just a mix-up? Was there any financial resulting
Are
from
you
that?
talking penalties?
Yes.
We didn't have any audit findings at all on this, so no penalties. The idea behind, and kind of why I'm excited to bring this forward right now, is that our idea was that we're proactive about really looking at any of the moves, and if there were mistakes, we get them get them corrected before there is an audit finding or before someone, worse yet, before someone retires and has some negative consequences, or that we get penalties from PERS or STIRS. So none on this, though.
Okay, because you mentioned, just another question, you mentioned that they were classified where they were overtime exempt. So did that correction have them do more money because maybe perhaps they should have been paid for overtime if they experienced any?
No, the corrections, what we did is we corrected them and did not have the employee experience any type of salary decrease. In some cases, there might have been we tried to pick the salary where they weren't experiencing a decrease at all. And then we changed this with attrition mostly. So when someone left a position, we would convert that position over to the classified or confidential. So, yeah.
Appreciate that.
So if I understand
Yeah,
this
Ms.
correctly, this was a procedure change that was put in place, and this is just coming back to make sure that the formal board approval is evidenced in records for future future findings or something.
That's
we'd
correct.
have it. Okay.
Exactly.
All right, may I have a motion for approval?
I move to approve the change in status, recommended action on this item.
I second.
Okay, motion second. All in
Could-
favor? Yes.
Sorry, I meant to point out, I do want to, if you could, we could get in the minutes that the vote does actually include the updated 2021 salary schedule.
Let me rephrase the action.
I want to make sure you got it. Did
Yeah.
you get that one? Yeah.
I move to approve the 2020 change in status from management to classified confidential positions for executive assistant to superintendent and administrative assistant, human resources, and corresponding job description and salary schedules.
That's perfect.
Is that covered?
Yeah.
Okay.
There was
And
just an update before it posted, after it posted, that was to the 2021, and I just want to make sure that one is the one that we're
It's part of the
approving. Yeah.
Okay, and then yeah. So can you just second that
Well,
correction of the vote?
what I just read was a motion to approve 2020 change in status. Should it be 2020?
Sorry, the change in
2021.
status were the two
Okay.
positions, and then we uploaded the salary schedules corresponding
Yes.
to the 3 years. I believe it was 3 years. It's just that one of them, we gave you a late update so that the title on that was accurate. And I want to make sure that's the one that's approved.
Yes.
Yeah, the G9,
Yeah.
right.
And we have it in print in front of
Yeah.
us.
So we
Yes.
should be good.
Okay, so is the motion correct?
Yeah, and updated salary schedules. I think so. I think that's what you said.
Yeah, I read corresponding job description and salary schedules.
Yeah.
Updated? Okay, add updated to that.
Thank you.
Okay, all right. Now can I have a second to the corrected motion?
Okay, I second.
Okay. All in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
All right, and this final item for me tonight is the operations that are needed to implement one of the LCAP goal and action items. So I did list that in there. This is an Ed Services action item in the LCAP related to PEAK, the PEAK program. It's a Goal 1, Action 13. You'll notice that if you looked in the LCAP, it was a 1.1 million, something like that, item to deal with supporting the PEAK program and the expansion of that program. So one of the items within that 1.1 million is the addition of this PEAK program coordinator. And so what my role is here tonight is to get the board to consider that job description and the approval of that position. Once that occurs, then Ed Services can move forward with implementing that piece of that action item in the LCAP. You'll notice that I did include a job description in there, so I'm happy to turn it over to you for any questions you might have about that particular job. In the approval of this item, we'd recommend that we eliminate the AVID from the title and make the motion to just be PEAK, because this is just a PEAK program coordinator.
Any requests to speak on this item?
No.
Okay. Board members, any questions or comments? Hearing no comments or questions, may I have a motion for approval?
I move to approve this item.
I think you may have. Are
Oh.
you good?
No, you go. I'll second.
Okay. Banning made the motion. You want a second? Okay. Hearing that confusion, all in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye.
Thank you
Motion
very much.
passes. Thank
Still
you.
summer.
Okay. Now we're moving to item G11, approval of memorandum of understanding for the Panorama Education. Miss Edison is coming.
Good evening. Congratulations, Superintendent, on a job well done and a much-deserved extension. Excited to be on the team. I'm bringing forward, as we presented last at the board meeting about the bundles that we're doing. Panorama was highlighted, but we said the contract would come separately. Panorama is a climate culture survey. We currently have been implementing CHICS, which is the California Healthy Kids Survey. We are transitioning as we are an MTSS district and using data to guide all of our decisions. We're looking for robust climate culture work that we can triangulate the data amongst all of our stakeholders, which are our students, our families, and our staff. Panorama provides us a platform to do this work. It is closely correlated with CHICS, the LCAP, bless you, the LCAP questions that are also on CHICS, which is the California Healthy Kids Survey, school climate, relationships, sense of belonging, engagement, school safety are still within the Panorama survey. What we're getting in Panorama is also a dashboard that makes data actionable. We're also getting a dashboard that allows us to do progress monitoring in a very quick, succinct way without having to take a written report that we receive and dig deeper, but instead a click of a button. As we're moving to having all of our staff look at data and we talk about relationships and climate and culture, we need to provide them a tool that makes it accessible for them. And we also can monitor our participation rates. It's also a professional learning platform for any teacher. They can look within the results of their classrooms, see an area that they want to work on, and also dive deeper, have professional learning and lesson plans on how to build that one area of work. So we have, I know there was questions about if it was going to put us in any setbacks with CDE. We followed up with CDE as long as we are covering the data points that we need and we don't receive grants that require CHICS, the California Healthy Kids Survey, then we are, as a local district, able to select which tool we use.
Okay. Any requests to speak from the public?
No.
Okay. Comments, board members? Mr. Banning?
I'd just to say I really appreciate the forward-lookingness of this with the social-emotional learning aspects and the fact that CHIC doesn't cover all of our students. To go beyond that is the right thing to do in the current climate. I appreciate the ability to support this.
Thank you. We will be surveying 3 through 12th grade, so thank you. That is more students.
Any additional comments? May I have a motion for approval?
I will move to approve the MOU with Panorama Education.
I'll second.
Okay, motion second. All in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Ms.
Thank you very
Edison.
much.
Motion passes. We're moving to item G12, approval of contracts and memorandum of understanding over 10,000, and we are Student and Family Services. Okay.
For this item, we're bringing also Dr. Carla Curry and Dr. John Shetler. Almost Dr. John Shetler to the
Never
podium.
Good evening. I'm here with Dr. Carla Curry, our new Director of Special Education, and we are presenting a bundle of 10 special education contracts. I want to point out these are not all the contracts that you're going to see or review for special education, but we wanted to bring you 10 that were really focused on groups of students or programs or tools for groups of employees. Oftentimes what you'll see on consent agendas or with other lists, those are contracts for individual students, and so obviously that makes it a little bit more difficult to have a public-facing conversation, but if you ever have questions about any of those, you're more than welcome to ask them. if we can, maybe I can do it. Go to the next slide. So I know you're familiar with this graphic, and you'll see that we are going to review our MTSS pyramid and talk to you about where special education fits into that. But the contracts that we're bundling today really focus on the center of the circle. They're either for direct services to students, or they are tools or curriculum for our staff in order to help them be more successful in their jobs. So a couple things I want to point out. You've seen this pyramid. We talked about it last time with the student and family services contracts. Special education really lives above and beyond the three-tiered pyramid. So students with IEPs are general education students first, meaning they get the benefit of all the good stuff that we offer in tiers 1, 2, and 3. And then when their IEP teams determine they need additional supports for them as individuals, those things we also provide. And so we just don't want to lose sight of the fact that when we have kids who qualify for special education, it doesn't mean they get all their support through the special ed program. Part of our push to build this MTSS system is that we can help students better without requiring them to have some kind of categorical label. And so I'm going to ask Dr. Curry to talk with you about some of the specific contracts that we're bringing forward, and then we'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Good evening.
Good evening.
We'll start with direct supports to students. Children's Therapy Network provides physical therapy services to students with a variety of disabilities in Santa Barbara Unified School District, and these services are based on the student's individual IEP, individualized education programs. Soliant is a healthcare staffing company that provides Santa Barbara Unified with highly qualified professionals in hard-to-fill positions. Due to the large number of multilingual learners with special education communication needs, Santa Barbara Unified has partnered with Soliant in contracting a bilingual speech and language therapist and a bilingual speech-language therapy assistant for the 23-24 school year. And next are the learning tools and curricula. There are many SB Unified students who cannot effectively read standard print because of visual cognitive impairment, dyslexia, or other learning need. Learning Ally is a reading application that provides learners with a library of over 8,000 human-narrated audiobooks with interactive learning tools such as highlighted text synced with the audio narration, speed control, bookmarking, highlighting, and note-taking. The platform helps students with disabilities improve their comprehension and understanding of the general education text instead of focusing on the mechanics of reading. Since Santa Barbara Unified students with extensive support needs are general education students first, they are entitled to and are required to access the general education curriculum across all grade levels. The unique learning system in Teachtown are online, standard-based curricula that are specifically designed and modified for pre-K through post-secondary students with extensive support needs. Subscribers download monthly instructional thematic units of study that contain lesson plans, interactive student materials, assessments, progress monitoring, automated reporting, and research-based teaching strategies that can be quickly and easily implemented into the general education and special education classrooms. Moving on, as we all know, professional development is essential in encouraging career growth, increasing productivity, and increasing employee retention. The Master Teacher is an online professional development platform designed to offer continuous learning opportunities for every employee in a school or a district. Specifically, the Master Teacher Paraeducator Learning offers 120 courses just for paraeducators covering topics in the general and special education settings. Courses organized into bite-sized units with post-tests at the end that are automatically graded. The content aligns with the Council for Exceptional Children Standards for Professional Learning and is endorsed by the Council of Administrators in Special Education. And last one in this area. While speech is our primary mode of communication, we have many SB Unified students with disabilities that communicate in multiple ways. Some use speech, sign, symbols, gestures, facial expressions, writing, eye gaze, and or use a communication device. Tobii Dynavox BoardMaker is a symbol-based communication software system that supports students that are multimodal communicators. Subscribers are able to create unlimited symbol-supported instruction and communication materials with a library of over 40,000 symbols to choose from. And then moving on to the last category, technical assistance. Katia Manning is a marriage and family therapist that provides clinical supervision to 5 Santa Barbara Unified
mental health trainees who provide individual counseling to students with IEPs, while actively working on their marriage and family or social work credentials. Dr. Jerice Butterfield provides monthly reading intervention training, coaching, and data analysis to junior and high school literacy special education teachers to support the learning needs of students with symptoms of dyslexia. And lastly, Maureen Burness is a California Department of Education and Technical Assistance facilitator that provides the required yearly support for Santa Barbara Unified due to the continuing identification as significantly disproportionate through the compliance and improvement monitoring process. And that is all I have.
Okay, any requests to speak on this item?
No.
Okay. Board members, any comments or questions? Welcome, Dr. Curry. Thank you for, I think we haven't had a chance to say hello, and so welcome. So we got you here, and thank you so much. So hearing no questions or comments, may I have a motion for, okay. Do we have, okay, sorry. Okay.
Thank you for catching that. Yes, we did have one, Leslie Sanderson,
She's not online.
not
Okay.
online.
Thank you. Okay, hearing that, may I have a motion for approval? Ms. Jones?
Okay, motion to approve the contracts and memorandums of understanding.
Second.
Okay, moving second. All in favor, raise your hand and please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you, and welcome, Dr. Curry. Board members, typically we have a quick break between action items and report, but we're ready to go for it. You know how to take self-care. So, okay, so we're just gonna see Ms. Pilhofer here. We're just gonna do a switcheroo in terms of have the EML report first, and then we'll go to H1. We'll go H2 first.
Good evening, Board President Sims Moten, Superintendent Dr. Maldonado. Congratulations on your renewal of your contract, Community and Families Online. This agenda item is the final emergent multilingual report in a series of 3 before passing the baton to Dr. Deborah Martinez, our new Director of Educational Equity and Multilingual Learner Services. Oh, we have a clicker. So this graphic represents the beginning of the journey for our EMLs upon enrollment in the district. Every caregiver that is new to the district is to complete a home language survey during the initial enrollment process. If a student home language survey indicates a language other than English, the student English proficiency levels are assessed within 30 calendar days of enrollment. If a student's initial LPAC scores indicate they are not initially English proficient, they are then reclassified as initially proficient in English, or they are an emergent multilingual learner, which entitles the student to Title III services. Once a student is classified as an EML, they are then required to take the summative LPAC annually until the student has met the state and district criteria for reclassification. Thank you. As fluent English proficient. Thank you very much. Okay, next slide. According to our 22-23 enrollment data, of the 12,300 students enrolled in SB Unified, approximately 46% of our students are ever EMLs, meaning they have been classified as an emergent multilingual at some point during their history of school. While active EMLs comprise 15% of the district, a larger portion of students in the district are reclassified as English proficient and being monitored on their progress, or have exited from Title III services after 4 years of monitoring. When reporting EML outcomes, it is important to keep in mind that EMLs make up a full spectrum of profiles and experiences in the district. Whether an EML has just begun their journey as a newcomer or as an experienced long-term EML, with 6+ years in the U.S. school or program. This graphic represents the profile makeup of EMLs in elementary and secondary by subgroup, program, and years in U.S. schools or California. Noting nearly 90% of EMLs are under-resourced or socioeconomically disadvantaged, 16% receive special education services,
And 63% of our secondary EML population are long-term EMLs with 6+ years receiving services and have yet to reclassify. It should be highlighted here that EMLs are not a homogeneous group, and a diversity of factors contribute to their language acquisition levels. When comparing between subgroups of EMLs and EMLs and English-only students, their profiles provide a rich source of information to us. SB Unified serves a culturally and linguistically diverse student population that brings many assets to our district. Approximately 44% of our students come from homes in which the family already speaks the language. More than 20 languages are spoken amongst our students, with Spanish being the most commonly reported language, representing 92% of our ever EMLs. Our students vary in their speed when it comes to reaching second language acquisition. Each EML's journey to reclassification may depend on many factors. However, research on language acquisition attainment suggests that development of a second language typically takes 5 to 7 years. This graphic reflects the state and district prescribed levels of annual measurable attainment of English language proficiency per school year on LPAC. This means that EMLs should reach an overall LPAC 4, meeting their reclassification criteria with 1 to 6 years. Depending on the proficiency level at which they started in enrollment is an important factor to consider. This takes us to how our EMLs are progressing on LPAC from year to year. This graph represents the progression, stagnation, or regression of elementary and secondary students on LPAC in comparing scores from the 22 and 23 school year. Uplifting that the goal of our EMLs is to progress one level on LPAC approximately every year. The work of the district has been and will continually examine the factors that influence the regression and stagnation of rates amongst our EMLs and ensure that they are given the appropriate supports when needed. This graphic represents the reclassification rates for elementary, junior high, and high school in the district for the 22-23 school year. Reclassification is the process whereby a student is reclassified from EML status to fluent English proficient, and reclassification can take place at any time during the academic year and immediately upon the student meeting all criteria. In SB Unified, nearly 6% of the EMLs who began the school year as an EML ended the year having been designated as fluent English proficient. A significantly high reclassification rate as compared to past years. This marks more than 20 percentage points higher than the previous year in spite of post-COVID conditions. So something to celebrate. So in conclusion of this report, this table describes the high-impact focus areas to be in service to our EMLs in alignment with our LCAP. Our goals are to continue to monitor EML progress and instruction, continue to increase our reclassification rates through the development of a professional learning plan, in support of both designated and integrated language development in TK-12 in all content areas and throughout each school day. To continue to monitor special education disproportionality in elementary and dual identification of EMLs in TK-12, and finally to continue our good work in increasing and enriching our authentic parent engagement. And this concludes our presentation. I'm happy to take any questions.
Any requests to speak from the public?
No.
Questions or comments from the board? Ms. Munoz?
Hi. Thank you, Ms. Pelfhofer. I appreciate the data and the clarity of the presentation.
Thank you.
Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Mr. Escobedo?
Thank you, Ms. Pelfhofer, for the presentation. A couple of questions. Can we go back to the slide that has the 5 columns and we have student A, B, C, D, and E?
Sure.
I want to just make sure that I'm understanding it correctly. This is meant to show that depending on where a student starts, the amount of time it takes them to get reclassified, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. So upon initial enrollment, we actually assess them to see where their proficiency levels are, and that can be on any of the spectrum of learning within the English language proficiency that we've described on LPAC, or the
Okay.
initial LPAC. So if student B ends up being in the expanding level, that's where their journey starts towards reclassification.
Okay. And then a couple of slides later, you showed the increase, and I think you said 20 percentage points higher than previous years or something to that effect. What would you attribute the increase to?
I think it's attributed to the team. Our work at the school level has been, I think, twofold. We've been doing a really amazing job at just keeping track and monitoring our EMLs. I think having a data system, much like Elevation and the EML report that you all have seen, that we're better able to attract those students and keep the reclassification where they're needed. So if a student needs more support on STAR reading, we ensure they get what they need in order to do better within that criteria that's needed towards reclassification.
Thank you. As we move forward with updating our LCAP later this year, I would be interested, Dr. Maldonado and Ms. Pilhofer and anyone else who has information leading up to that process that can inform us on not only reclassification, but really how can we best support our EML students to support this increase in reclassification. You all are the experts. I want to know how, as a board, we can best support this district to continue this increase. This is really encouraging, where we're not always seeing increases, especially after COVID. This is a really bright spot, but wanting to see far more of our students get reclassified. And I think a huge opportunity is LCAP. I'm informed by the information that you all share as subject matter experts, and so I'm looking forward to getting some of that information leading up to that process.
I think Dr. Martinez is going to be very instrumental in the next phase of work. Her and I have been really working on the transition plan and ensuring that she has at least been onboarded with all the materials that we have offered our students. We've adopted 2 new curriculum. We have been creating data systems alongside and enriching our MTSS process. So I think it's a lot of upkeep, but it's a yes and. And really understanding what it is that our students need that are within the long-term EML stage. So those are the students that need the most support and make up the majority of our secondary schools.
Absolutely.
And I would like to add to that, thank you, Ms. Pilhofer. I know you're going in, you've already started your new job, so thank you for doing report number 303.
Sure.
I think a very important indicator of the success that is being mentioned that I think it's important for board members to help us with is the communication around that. The population of emergent multilingual students is not monolithic. They are not all the same. They don't speak the same languages. They come in at different levels of proficiency, both in their home language, their first language, and then as they acquire a second language. That trajectory, while that looks like a very clean table, the progress can be like peaks and valleys. And they could have years of great gains, but the ball continues to be moved every time they change to a new grade level. So they might be really proficient in reading, and as the third grade standards come in and get introduced and they start to take their exams, that changes, and it almost starts like a new clock every single grade level around the reading expectations. The LPAC stays pretty consistent, but even as they get older, the content gets more difficult. So it's a constantly moving target, so the monitoring of students is the key. And we didn't just monitor through a platform. We've provided monthly reports to principals every month to show where their students are making progress and where they're not. So that constant checking, which is all of what MTSS is about, speaks to some of the success. We also adopted new curriculum for the students and continue to work with leaders across the district, from us here being able to provide the reports, the tools necessary, working with teachers on their practices, but really knowing what students need when they need it and giving it to them is the key. But as board members, it would help us greatly for you to be able to have this data point, having almost half the students in our school district at some point having been an EML is something I don't think we necessarily always talk about or hear about. When we look at overall district, very 30,000-foot view outcomes around reading and mathematics, which all require language, is really important for us to remember that. The other part of that is how we learn, how we teach and learn. During the pandemic, we used a lot of online learning, a lot of platforms, a lot of different modalities, which did not exist when I was a bilingual teacher. Yet language is the mode of instruction. So if you understand it, you have access to it. If you don't understand the language, it basically prohibits you from learning both the language and the content. So as board members, if you can help with those talking points around the understanding of the impact of having a large EML population, the impact of what it does to their learning, and the fact that they have to learn language and content at the same time, because for the most part, we still only have our EML population enrolled in English-only programs. We have a very small population of our EMLs enrolled in dual language, which is where you provide that primary language support. Otherwise, we're still operating as a strictly English-only program of instruction. There are other programs we can think about bringing forward as a school district, like a transitional bilingual program where they can start in K to third grade with their primary language as they're learning English and then switch to English only in fourth grade. That hasn't been discussed yet, but I know it was part of the Meta plan that was adopted right at the height of the pandemic. So those are just some offerings from my experience in this area that we can think about as a board going forward. But I would say that those are some of the important points to remember.
And I appreciate you sharing that, and I mean this wholeheartedly, and I think we're all up for the challenge. But give us homework, give us that information, give us those talking points, so that when we're talking to folks, we're speaking the same exact language that you all are when you're talking to parents, when you're talking to people out in the community. Because I am sincere about the fact that I really want us as a board to support your effort in supporting our EML students. And I have a particular interest in a couple of things. One, making sure that we are getting those reports to principals, but what are they doing with that information, and making sure that the successes that happen at one of our schools is shared with some of our other schools, and we have consistent practices and outcomes for our students. And then the other thing is that LPAC, the fact that it only happens once a year is a huge problem, and I want to keep us on talking to our state representatives and start building coalitions of folks. You brought up a coalition, I think, in a previous conversation you and I had. That sort of change happens slow, but we need to be a part of it and be a part of that conversation. So ways like that we can support you, please do not be shy about sharing that with us, giving us information so that we're more prepared to have those conversations and engage with you.
I will contact Californians Together and see if I can get them to come and make a presentation to the board on their policy advocacy work.
Thank you. And thank you, Ms. Bellhofer.
Thank you.
I have a preface question and then a follow-up. Can you tell me the amount of subjective analysis that is done to reclassify a student as opposed to objective? How much subjective input is there for LPAC for the younger students? Is it based in any manner on who is the test proctor or giving the test? That's the first question.
So there is some subjectivity there, and what's great about our district is that we have highly trained district language access team members who give the one-on-one assessment. What we did learn because of COVID, in spite of COVID, is that in our teachers giving the LPAC exam, that our students are in fact doing better on the exam themselves. Another pivot that happened this year, which is kind of a really wonderful surprise that wasn't intentional, is that we are teaching our students how to advocate for themselves. So we're teaching them to ask to pause the recording when they're taking the test, and also to replay. And this is as young as our little ones. So just having them advocate for themselves has been a huge plus and can be attributed to the rates we currently have.
And is the same thing true in terms of the final decision to reclassify a student, that it's not just based on the objective results of LPAC, but there is other input from adults and instructors?
We do. So we have an EML team, which a huge addition to that team is what we're calling an EML lead at the secondary level. And that person plays very much like a case manager. So they're following those students that need supports when they need it, and they're ensuring that there's a connection between that EML student and the generalist teacher. So they're helping them with instruction and so on, but also our parents are a big part of the decision for reclassification. They advise us, and they are counsel to us in the process.
So I just want to say, and follow up to those answers, first of all, thank you for a comprehensive look into what we're doing. This is incredibly complex, as we've heard in just the dialogue here and the different ideas and different thoughts, how complex it is to deliver the services and to measure them in a way that's sustainable and accurate and reliable. And one of the things I worry about is that a large, big, audacious goal of have more students reclassified doesn't turn into an expectation that we can do that through methods of perhaps changing our judgment of what it means. Mm-hmm. And there are ways to look further, deeper into that. And I know that you know of them, but I'm saying this for the board and the people that are listening. This is so complex. Mm-hmm. And we can't just carve out little pieces and say this represents success. We saw things in the charts that were wonderful. I would ask questions like, how are our reclassified English learners doing compared to English learners or English-only learners on the state tests? Many times you'll see that they actually outperform them. And if that's the case, that's more information that would help us. And when we talk about the Ever EMLs, that was an astounding piece of data for me tonight. Almost half of our students in the district were at some point. But that's K-12 or TK or pre-K-12. Have we looked at data that says how many of the graduating class were ever EMLs? And how many of them are now? And I understand that even that's complex because people move out of the class. It's not a consistent cohort, but there's so many questions that you have to ask. And I'm not saying this to challenge us other than to just be aware of all of this. What I can see in just the 6 months I've been on the board, the constant emphasis on this, the discussion, the answers that give you good direction about how things are happening and why this may happen. We have lots to be proud of, but never the freedom to presume that it's not something that will always be complex and always take enormous resources in order to be successful. So thank you for your work and for everybody in the district that's involved with this, and it should be everybody in the district that is involved with this. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. And again, I just want to add to just a couple questions that stood out to me when you said this is not a homogeneous group. There are assumptions. And so I think that really resonated me, that it's not just Spanish speaking. There's lots of different things. So either I didn't see it or I didn't pay attention to that, but that really stood out to me. And then a question I'd like to see, I'm going to go step back for early care and education. So how can we, because it's important parent engagement on that. I think that was on one of your goals there, the parent engagement. So how can we support parents early since they are their child's first teacher? How do we do that? Get involved with that. To Mr. Escobedo's point about give us some homework so that we can just do platforms, or we can start to look in early fives, start to look at parenting platforms. When you do home visitation, do we need to add some parts of that to address that, to support the parents? How do we do that? Not looking for an answer, but just something to think about. And then I have a question about at how many, or if we have that data, where are most of our, or what grade level are our EMLs entering into our system? Is it coming in at kindergarten, or is it coming in at various levels?
Most are coming in kindergarten,
Okay.
which is kind of a great thing. It's a great place to start.
Yeah.
It's when we get past the post-early literacy stage in fourth grade on that it becomes increasingly more difficult, as Dr. Maldonado has mentioned, for a student to reach language proficiency. I think sometimes we assume that they don't already come with a language system and literacy levels, and I think assessment can play a big part in that. So having the right tools and being consistent in our approach to assessing our students upon enrollment is critical.
And don't forget that we also receive students in seventh grade from 4 other school districts.
Mm-hmm.
And getting the data from those school districts is critical in the seventh grade.
Yes.
And sometimes in the ninth grade, when we may get other students also coming in. So it's kindergarten, seventh, and ninth are critical grades for us to really look at students and how they're coming into us.
Yeah, that's really good data. And you know what? What is the LPAC? I want to actually see it and do it and take it.
There is a practice test.
Okay.
I highly encourage you to take it
Just to
if you
kind of
can.
get, just to kind
Yeah.
of.
We'll do it with them.
I think it's
Yeah.
a great exercise because you'll find that even our English-only students, which we don't want to compare, like you mentioned, is that it is a challenging exam. And in sixth grade is when it kind of boots up a little bit and it becomes even more difficult for a student to acquire a level 4.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing for us to do, at least for
Yeah.
me, to just kind of get a ground level understanding of it. And now it was the LPAC that only gets taken once a year. I was trying to put Denise on the spot, and I couldn't tell her which report it was. So now I get it. I'm connecting it. So no. The previous meeting, I was telling Denise, she's like, "What? I don't know." Well, right, but so yeah, I would love to just experience like what that is, so that then as we go out and talk about those points and advocate for that, why is it only 1 year, or other things that we need to do at board levels, I certainly can, advocate that in the early experience. How do we support parents in that early literacy as they're coming into kindergarten? How do we support them in that piece, and then how do we work across our school districts in terms of doing that same thing? Are we doing things as a city and county, those feeder districts, are we doing the same thing? Is it consistent, in terms of getting them ready when they're moving to hit that next stage? So just something to think about.
That's great. I think the best gift is to read in Spanish or whatever the primary language is that you celebrate primary language.
So do you assess in their primary language when they first come, or are you assessing for English?
At this time, it's just through our dual language immersion programs, which are in elementary, junior, and high school.
Okay.
But if there is a case in third grade where we receive a student and we recognize there's some literacy that they're bringing with them, that we do assess them. And so star reading does come in Spanish, and we tend to lean on that assessment to get
Yeah.
some data.
And I think we need to be creative in how we do things. I was just already thinking about how do we start that early piece. One of the things that we focus on, talk, reading, and singing, right? So how can we start that early, making that transition and supporting in the actual strategies that we use to increase literacy? So could we look at that and support that? So did you have one more thing, Mr.?
Yeah, and thank you. That was so helpful for me, your questions and comments and dialogue. And I just wanted to pull out one point that make sure that I heard it. It's very important to try and get our kids reclassified before 6th grade.
It is.
And so I think for me personally, want to learn a little bit more about how we can support our elementary schools and make sure that we're providing all of the resources necessary to get them reclassified. I also think you're talking about smaller number of kids that are manageable. We were doing the school safety plans, and Principal Naughton showed me what he was doing with keeping track of his EML students, and I was very impressed. And my question was, are all of our schools doing this? And that is
better.
yeah, and so that's those sorts of areas of success, making sure that we're doing them in other places. I would love to know what each of our schools are doing, and if that's something that we can do, even if it's online and not in a board meeting. Like I said, give us homework. I don't mind reading.
I will
and
work
so
with Deborah on that.
just
Yes.
thank you so much for this presentation, and my fellow board members for the dialogue. It's extremely helpful. And Dr.
Thank you
Maldonado.
all.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you. So board members, we'll move to our last item of the evening, a 2023 Santa Barbara Unified School District Board Governance Calendar. I know it's been long coming. So Dr. Maldonado, you want to start us off on that?
So we know that one of the responsibilities is for the Board of Trustees to help us keep the business of the district running in a focused and timely manner. The governance calendar is something that's recommended as a tool for guiding our work and our agenda planning, fiscal priorities, strategic and committee board development work by California School Boards Association. So we bring to you today this proposed calendar that we'd like to have a discussion with you about tonight. We met earlier as cabinet, and we already know that there's a couple changes we're going to offer to you as we get into this discussion. And then if we get to some agreements tonight, I'd like to bring it back for approval at the next board meeting. I do want to recognize what Board Trustee Banning said, which is welcome to the 23-24 school year, and starting off with a governance calendar is the right way to do this. So I hope you've had a chance to review it, to preview it. You'll notice that the top section begins with the governance of the district, so we can maybe start through that strand. We added items like conducting a board self-evaluation and creating a plan for improvement as something that can maybe take place in these next 2 months. We do have the upcoming joint meeting with the board and the city council in May, or the August 14th is listed there. We're proposing a governance workshop in September, a negotiations workshop in October, and a budget study session in November, which we believe Ms. Hernandez looked at, and also that gets us to that period between the 45-day budget and before the first interim as a good time for us to have that. December, looking at the adoption resolution delegation of powers. January, certification of board officer and staff signatures. And then again, April, May, we wanted to do a second look at board self-evaluation. And lastly, the interdistrict transfers hearing and closed session in June. Those are some of the items, and would like to hear your feedback.
Board members, any questions, comments? Mr. Escobedo.
My only question is for July, August, as the board is self-evaluation and create plan for improvement, whether or not that's realistic for us to accomplish in that period of time. We're halfway through July, and if that's something that is maybe more appropriate, and maybe it's I know President Sims-Moten and I had talked about maybe a retreat in the fall, something like that in September or October rather than July or August, and give us ourselves a little bit of time as we're gearing up for the new school year. I'm not sure we'll have time to get to it.
So proposing to move that more to September, October?
Yes.
Okay. Any other?
So if we move the first one initially from July to August to September, we're thinking, whatever that looks like, right? Whether it's a retreat or however the case may be, right? Is that giving enough time to make any change? You know?
I believe that the second round is more like checking on your progress for whatever goals you set in the fall. So the spring could be more just a review, like how do we do?
So did we make our
And
goals?
we could maybe move that to May. I just want to call attention to the fact that May becomes a very busy month.
Right.
Graduations, board adoptions, and things like that. But we can certainly move, I do want to kind of check in with the self-evaluation. If you're thinking of a board retreat, do we want to maybe consider doing the self-evaluation coupled with some of the other workshops, like the governance or negotiations workshops? So maybe we do one full day instead of 3 different events. Would that be something you might want to consider? Or do you think those are 2 separate topics to take on?
Well, what would be involved in the board self-evaluation? Is it a meeting? Is it a document that we're all signing? So I guess that would, for
Yeah.
me, would say what would be involved in that.
So my understanding, CSBA has, do you want to speak to it? So my understanding, CSBA has a rubric that you would use to self-evaluate, where you would rank yourselves. You would take the data about your, like looking at governance protocols, looking at the way that you interact, and then through that, build some discussion on any new agreements you might want to make changes to. I'll just stick with the topic of governance protocols, for example. And it's more just a self-review, a little bit of what we did with our last board retreat with Ms.
Right.
Tony Cook,
Okay, yeah.
and coupled with the document from CSBA.
Yeah, I would see combining a couple of things, as a retreat, how we build out the retreat, or the president, how they build out the retreat. I could see that.
Yeah.
Then the second one, when we're coming back for the second, review that.
Yeah, and then typically the document that we're referring to, the CSBA has standards, there's several of them around,
Right.
many of them include the same types of things. They are really I would almost call it a self-assessment as opposed to evaluation. It's really,
Okay.
how well are you actually implementing and the protocols and the things that you have in place. And so it's really, I think, a fairly simple, short process of, you said you're going to do X and Y, how do you think you're doing on that? And that gives you a sort of prioritized list of protocols that you're either doing really well and keep them up, or maybe they're ones where you need more attention or even more understanding on them. And I think it would be a really good idea to do something like that provided a presenter or a workshop facilitator with information about what we believe about how we're doing before we actually sit down with them.
Before the governance workshop.
Yeah.
Right. So we could couple it. So I can work on that with the Greg Dennis, who we're looking at bringing to do the governance workshop and the negotiations workshop. But I did split it up into different months, but why don't I put together something with him that could maybe make it like one longer day rather than 3 different times, but I'll talk with him and see if I can adjust this a bit.
We provide through the assessment form or the tool ahead of time, right? So,
Correct.
okay, it wouldn't be this like we're saying between July and August. Actually, that would now become a tool that we would then use for the governance workshop.
Right, so I'll look into seeing how we can do that if there is some other, I'm sure there's new platforms and tools that we can use. Okay?
A general comment about the governance calendar. Thank you for putting this out there, and I would like to just say to the board, this can be viewed very much like a budget document is. It's a plan. It's not a cage that you're in. There are times that things have to be moved around, or times that there are things on them that may not even be happening.
Yeah.
I see that you've done this as specific for the 22-23 school year.
Oh.
You can also
Should be 22, 24.
you can also imagine it without a year on it. That basically this is to help us understand what's coming in any given year, because so much of it is calendar dependent. That you have a template that you work on, and what do you need to change in this particular year. And then as you go through the year, some of the stuff may turn out to be too much or in the wrong place or not enough, and
Right.
it has to be a living document. It's really an overview plan document that can be very helpful. So I very much appreciate getting this on the agenda today. It's good work. I know this wasn't any one staff member's work.
Well, I do want to thank Steve and to help me get started with it, and the rest of cabinet. I'll just kind of ask, with the next, I wanted to touch on that one line of governance because it impacts your time, your time and attention. But the rest of it is, as you can see, LCAP, we want to make sure we bring you student outcomes reports. I know those are very meaty, the way we've designed them, but we feel that that's a great way for us to give you some of the progress updates. We did include under the superintendent's office and the direction for this district, some of the requests that we've had around the progress reporting of addressing racism and anti-Blackness. We settled on doing 4 reports in the fall, but again, we're going to try to time ourselves and, see how we do with this, and then we move to 3 in the spring, every other month. So once a month in the fall, every other month in the spring, for the progress of how that work is moving along. Under policy, I do want to remind the board and note that we did contract with CSBA to do some deep dive into policies that need to be updated because we have fallen behind in some of that work. So we can probably count, we're starting this August, and we can probably count at every board meeting having some policy update work. That'll be sort of a standing items for approval. So that's something that we wanted to note that's coming throughout the year.
Are they evaluating all of our policies, or are you selecting certain policies that you want them to focus on?
We contracted them to evaluate all our policies.
Okay. If I can elevate one, it would be the inter-district transfer.
That's definitely coming to you for the August 8th meeting. We're already working on getting that updated with our legal counsel.
Okay, thank you.
So that was already noted as a August 8th update.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And I would just add on the policies, I know there's times when we've had a lot that come up that, is it just a CSBA policy change, or these our policies that they're going to deep dive and change, or is this like a, ed code type of change? Because sometimes we're just.
It's both. I'm looking at Adriana because she helped me with this.
Okay.
It's going to be both because
Okay.
it's sometimes what CSB recommends, but it has to be localized
Right.
in many ways. But cabinet members who are mostly the ones that implement a lot of these policies will be working hand in hand with them when they arrive in August.
So
So
that
it's
we can
both.
give
I would say it's both. The
Okay.
answer is both.
So when we bring them, it doesn't just, because they're so heavy, it's like, we really want to get down and be able to understand them. Sometimes I've got 1,000 policies, I just kind of looked at it, is it just a policy and not pay attention?
Yeah,
So-
we'll make sure that
Yeah.
we bring attention to those that are
Yeah.
really potentially more controversial
Mhm.
or will need, your attention in a different way. There's some that are just procedural.
Right, exactly.
And so we'll try to make a note of what's procedural and what's really, something we want you to pay attention to. And we're going to try our best to manage our agendas to spread them out throughout the year in
Yeah.
order of importance to matters.
Yeah, and just to be responsive to the work that, the cabinet, everybody's putting together and
Yes.
doing it, we want to be responsive to that work. And again, to add on to your point about this calendar really is also a means to managing meeting time.
Yes.
The agenda itself.
That's
Like,
right.
okay, we're
That's
going to do this,
exactly right.
then we don't have, things that's going to take, forever if we need particular things that need to get done and passed.
Under business services, again, Ms. Hernandez and her team have a lot of must-dos, timelines, deadlines, and you can see by the months there, some of the work that they have laid out for the year. We have under ed services, some again, like Williams has to come at that time, quarterly reports. We have our own, we've added an ELA adoption report. We sort of are proposing that we bring to you 4 reports throughout the year, September, December, March, and June, just to let you know how the implementation of the new ELA adoption is going. We know it's a big adoption. We know there are other adoptions that have happened, like the health curriculum. I know that the state just adopted a new math framework. We're gonna probably be looking deeply at our mathematics, which is an area of need to improve. But we are cognizant and aware that our community really wants to know, you want to know, we want to know, how is the implementation of the adoption going? So we've laid out 4 times where we'll bring you an update on that. Under student and family services, again, some of the work around attendance, SARB hearings. We did put here anti-bullying month. I do want to call out that one of the things that President Simpson and I are talking about is looking at possibly bringing one resolution that outlines what we will be looking at every month, instead of bringing you a resolution for the month and trying to keep. Now, we can do this forever, so we're going to try to minimize, bringing everything every month, but really just one resolution that recognizes, here are every single month, what are things we're going to be calling attention to. Does that make sense?
I think that's a great idea. And then I think during our meetings, we can acknowledge what we are acknowledging that month.
Yeah, so the anti-bullying month will be crossed out, and I'm going to work on getting us one big resolution for that. We see Counselor Week, so we'll take some of those out under Student Services and just create like one resolution for the month. And then the SARC and LARC adoption, we did discuss that we're going to move it we're going to add a section called Assessment and Accountability, that Steve's going to be leading a lot this year with the new position that Anna Pilhofer will take on, which is the Director of School Performance and Student Outcomes. And that's where all our compliance and accountabilities will live, so the SARC will move to that department. It'll probably still be in the same month, but we'll be moving some of that around as well. Again, along with some of the Counselor Week, mental health awareness, attendance awareness, and so forth. Human Resources also has some required reporting, teacher assignments, if we have any proposed sunshining of proposal negotiations, releasing of staff, which is the March 15th deadline, and the calendar for the next school year. We do here in Santa Barbara Unified a year-by-year calendar adoption. We may want to talk to you about bringing more than 1 year at a time. I don't know if that's even a consideration, but just want to throw that out there. We have collective bargaining that happens throughout the year. ETS also has some requirements around CalPads in October, February E-rate, technology updates, and so forth. Facilities, we want to make sure that we work with Marina and her team on bringing a report to you in December on the facilities condition analysis and recommendations plan. We realize that we're bringing a lot of different things, but we really need to sit down as our measure and our bonds are coming to an end, that we have a real deep dive into what is left in terms of funding and how we prioritize. There's always more than needed to go around with facilities improvements, so we want to make sure we do that well. And I'm going to turn to my cabinet at this point and ask if there's anything that I missed or anything that you've caught since that I need to mention. So, sorry, I kind of just went through it really quick and I sort of read to you, but any other questions?
Ms. Jessica.
You may have mentioned this, and I see for Human Resources, the Sunshine proposals, are those the successor negotiations, or at what point in the year can we expect the negotiations to begin?
Yeah, with both our bargaining units, those will be, we'll move into successor negotiations, so those Sunshine proposals will be, it'll actually just be successor contract negotiations. The whole contract's open for negotiation. We may be moving those earlier. It's sounding like, just from my work with the bargaining units, that there might be some interest in discussing opening earlier than, say, the December, January, or February date.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Just to fill in just one specific gap, for example, the FIT, the Facility Inspection Tool, that has to be completed before we do the school accountability report card, because that's part of the SARC plans. Mm-hmm. So we want to make sure that we do that properly, and I've discussed it with Marina regarding this. as well as the SARC has to be completed by January. So some of these items you see here are actually, they need to be completed because of CDE deadlines, so.
Is this going to be on our website, or is this just an internal document?
We can certainly make it public. I mean, it is a public document. I'll say more about the website, but yes, we can upload it.
Okay, so I would add, again, we might want to just minimize our acronyms so that, or if we have it, have it
A
like
little
SARC and ARC.
glossary.
Yeah, just so you know, yeah.
We'll add a glossary. I don't think those boxes are going to let me fit everything. So
Yeah,
yes.
that makes sense.
And to Mr. Banning's point, maybe a little asterisk at the bottom that this is subject to change depending on what the
All
agenda
the
is.
legal language,
Yeah.
the small font.
Well, just so that people
Yes.
understand that.
Yes, when it lives in a website, it does give the impression that it's not movable, so we will have to make that very clear.
This is a great start.
So this
You know,
is
in
only a
terms of-
discussion item.
Exactly,
And I will bring one for approval to our next meeting. That concludes this item.
Okay. We had no request to speak, but we had Mr. Escondido.
I did want to acknowledge that the board did receive the public comment, a public comment email from Leslie Sanderson. So we missed her virtually, but we have the public comment here.
Did you want to share what she
Oh,
said? Or?
it is a very long public comment.
Oh.
I'm more than happy to read it, but
No, just summarize it,
I didn't read it yet.
Oh, okay, just that we received it. That
We
we're
received
good.
it. I just
We're
want to
good.
acknowledge that we received it.
Great,
Yeah.
okay. Thank you, Ms. Anderson. We have received your public comment through email. So that leads us next to I. We didn't have any consent items that we need to bring back, but as coming events under J, I'm not in that document.
We have summer graduations on August 10th. And then on August 14th, we have the joint meeting with City Council. And that's
I
at
do
what
wanna-
time?
Sorry, it's at 1 o'clock at
1
the
o'clock.
Faulkner Museum. I do want to say that you'll be getting a memo from us before this meeting on some of the work that we are preparing, so that you have the information ahead of time.
Thank you.
Okay. And so when we go to K for future agenda items, would that coincide with these future item coming events? Is that going to be coinciding with this calendar, or how are we doing that?
We should definitely make that change, and as this was only a discussion item.
Right. But
That's
just
what
as
we
we're
have
thinking
for
about
now.
that. Okay.
I do want to ask, what I'm thinking of doing for because we do need to get our facilitator booked and contracted for the governance and negotiations sessions. I will be sending some dates around through Adriana or Sandra for the board to give us some potential times that we can start to book up, because that's important that we get him locked in for those governance and negotiations workshops.
Okay.
And we'll build in some of the other board self-assessment.
Okay. So board members be looking out for that email so we can be responsive to be able to get there. So with that, our next meeting is August 8th. We are concluding this at 8:20. Let me tell you, I could clap my hands because Bill got dinner tonight. And the board was able to do that. And there's a song called I Can Make You Clap Your Hands. So we conclude, adjourned. Thank you so much for your work. Yeah. No, we've done one at 7:30, yeah. For us, yeah.